Hello and welcome back to Parachute Minds. My name is Jeremiah Sanchez, author of Parachute Minds, and today I figured I'd do something a little bit different. Normally when I share a short story, it's because I've taken the time to write it out, flesh it out, edit it, refine it, and make sure it's as smooth as it can be before I actually share it with you. However, I lead a monthly writing group where we get together with little prompts and we spend 1 hour writing short stories based off whatever directive we're given. So this last one that we got together during the Halloween season, I wrote a short story, and the prompt was a lot of fun. There were 2 hats. First hat had the name of everybody in the group, so you pull out someone other than yourself to write as a side character or a main character, just as long as they are involved. And then the second hat had classic horror Halloween monsters like vampires, werewolves, ghouls, witches, serial killers, etc. So I drew a woman named Desiree and Frankenstein, which ironically was, of all the monsters, the one that I wanted the least. However, I'm actually surprised with how well this turned out. So bear with me, it's a little rough. I only had 1 hour to write this. I hope you enjoy. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down upon the arched headstone, his looming figure silhouetted against the moonlight, highlighting a broad frame. Aches and uneven groans contorted his disproportionate limbs as he adjusted until still. Desiree cautiously found a square gravestone a safe distance from him to sit on. She squinted, studying the large figure opposing her. His energy was neutral, cold even, but she sensed how capable the large man was if threatened. Before considering a response, she looked round, put off by the lack of street lamps or torches. "I was intrigued by the invitation," she said, forcing her voice above a whisper. The cool breeze of frigid ghosts blew through, shielded only by her pulling her sweater tighter around her arms. The flat-topped man leaned forward, his shoulders popping and hissing as he stared into her. "Why did you come?" Desiree nodded, having anticipated the question. "Well, like I said, your invitation piqued my interest." She recalled receiving the letter, scribed upon a torn piece of old parchment. Penned in painstaking detail, the handwritten calligraphy had presented a simple query. "Does your heart complete you?" Below had been a familiar address, the graveyard. In truth, Desiree had felt a strange flush of grief after reading what she'd found at her doorstep. Something about it felt primal, as though the energy of the writer had been trapped within the simple conduit. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I suppose I was interested in pursuing whomever had written it, to find out who the question was about, you or me." The man stared at her a moment, considering the response. "I would give an arm and a leg to know the answer to that. I don't know whose, but it's a price worth paying." "So what does it mean?" Desiree asked, feeling comfortable enough to pry a little. "And why did you leave it at my doorstep?" The giant gave a slow shrug. "I pride myself on seeing the pieces that make a person whole. We are all missing something." He took a deep breath, his shoulders unevenly rising. "I saw you walking one night. An eerie truth, I know. I swear it was only in passing, nothing sinister. But I felt a warmth radiating from you." "A warmth?" Desiree asked, feeling both violated by the commentary and interested. "Explain." "Not physically," the man clarified. "You shiver in the night more than I. You clutch at jackets and hats to shield your pieces from the bitter nips of the moon." His dark gaze lingered on her a moment before turning down to the ground. "However, you emanate a warmth, an energy, as though if you were to lose some of your pieces, you would still remain whole." Desiree smirked, admittedly tickled by the giant's alluring perspective. "Well, thank you." She wasn't sure what else to say. "And what about you?" The silhouette deflated a tired grunt and turned his shadowed face to the ground. "I am only whole because of my pieces." The moonlight glowed off his wide back, framing the tattered frays of his crude jacket. "Without my legs, I was a monster. Without my arms, I am an abomination." Desiree cocked her head and sat back, finding a more comfortable position on the headstone. I might feel more comfortable if you were unarmed. She smiled, hoping he wouldn't be offended by her humor. The large man scoffed a laugh, bellowing into the dark, and rustling some birds across the pale sky. I have to hand that one to you, he said with forced energy. Desiree stopped resisting some laughter to purge the tension. Touché, sir, she said, ready to tempt the limits of his patience. I was hoping that one would defeat you. The tall figure's laugh burst louder, seeming to shake the barren trees like rattled skeletons. You have me in stitches, he wheezed, trying to calm his breath. You see, without even trying, you radiate happiness in a graveyard. Not a feat easily done. He paused. Ha! Feet. He shook his head, wanting to veer the conversation back. I don't know. I think they're kind of pretty, Desiree said, looking around the still resting place of the dead. The city wasn't far, bright lights and buildings visible about a mile away, but she enjoyed the secluded quiet that graveyards provided. They're beautiful places for reflection and perspective, a humbling reminder of sorts. We all inevitably end up here. The massive man took a deep breath, audibly bothered by the comment. I have many memories of sleeping in the dirt, different pieces of me. He tried to smile, but it only came when forced, and even then, his teeth ground together. I've had more than one foot in the grave. Desiree slowly nodded, trying to understand. And what does your heart do for you? Ah, the giant said, sitting back on the grave, placing his meaty hands on his knees. The $100 question. Desiree smirked a squint. Not worth $1 million to you, huh? Is that the saying now? The man asked with a small headshake. Inflation has taken a toll, even on questions. Desiree was growing more fascinated. As long as we're on cliché sayings, can we address the elephant in the room? Or graveyard? Elephant graveyard? She dismissed a Lion King rant and focused on her curiosity. You know what I mean. The man went quiet, turning his face straight toward her, though his features remained bathed in darkness. You want to know who I am? Desiree nodded, adjusting her beanie and smiling, hoping to disarm the stranger. She swallowed a chuckle at the wordplay in her head, focusing on how he chose to answer. The man considered a response before lowering his head. To be frank, I'm a man with a failing heart. You're dying? Desiree asked, not feeling any sense of urgency in the man's gruff tone. The large silhouette scoffed a dull laugh. It's too late for that. He shook his head. No, my heart does not fail me with the beats it has left, but with the warmth it refuses to produce. Desiree leaned forward, trying to make out more of the man's face, specifically his eyes. What do you mean? Whoever's heart this once was, it's gone cold. Ah, Desiree said, finally feeling some directional traction. You're a lover. Who was she? Or perhaps a he? No, the giant said. I have never known love. Well, once, I think, by my creator. Desiree slowly nodded, finding herself a smidge puzzled. You're a spiritual man. Again, the giant shook his head. My only god is the lightning, but even its thunderous voice speaks no love. Desiree dismissed the idea of Norse mythology and Thor. Okay. She tried to think of what to say. So, your heart. She sat back, surrendering the conversation for him to steer. Tell me. My arms, the giant said. They are only as strong as they were. My legs, too, do not grow, but remain. I am nothing but the hollow echo of what once was. He measured his words. I find flickers of joy in my head, as though this brain possesses memories of happiness. He cracked a fragile smile as he looked askance. I don't see them, but I can feel their tepid glow. Desiree tried to read between the lines. So your heart was never happy? The large man nodded, finally able to express what he'd summoned her for. Wherever it came from, It beats only thuds. It never sings of love or laughter. A strange wave of sympathy wreathed Desiree's cloaked arms in goosebumps. And what were you hoping I can do for your heart? The man went still, his breathing quiet. He stared at her, his whole body squared off against her smaller frame. Replace it. Before Desiree could make sense of the answer, the giant sprung from the grave, lurching toward her with 2 massive strides. Desiree went to scream, to scramble away, but her voice was choked from her as a vice grip yanked her from her feet. Desiree fought against the 9-foot behemoth, holding her with effortless grace above the ground. His cold fingers around her throat may as well have been stone. She kicked and hit his solid figure, desperately trying to free herself, to breathe. The large man turned with her in tow, shifting until his face was illuminated by moonlight. Desiree's eyes shot wide, her limbs freezing in statuesque horror as she saw the mangled expression, tortured by misshapen cheeks, twisted nostrils, and sutures stitching pieces of corpse together. Jaundiced eyes, sunken and dark, scowled at her with a twisted sense of longing. Desiree wanted to scream, but even if she could breathe, her voice would have retreated into her depths. Her heart was racing so quickly she could feel its pulse in her ears. The giant, too, could feel her beating heart, and it curved his mouth with an emotional smile, tears welling in his wretched eyes. "Thank you for this peace," he said, squeezing harder until Desiree's face turned blue. "Thank you for the warmth it will give."